इस दिलचस्प कहानी में we're going to explore one of the most incredible underdog tales in modern business history. I mean, we're talking about a young kid who took what the biggest corporations were literally throwing in the trash and used it to build a massive global empire. It's this wild story of grit, brilliant observation, and just an unshakable will to succeed. Honestly, whatever you think you know about corporate monopolies, forget it, because we are looking at how a discarded piece of fruit transformed into a multi-million-dollar operation and eventually reshaped an entire continent. This isn't just history, it's a masterclass in market disruption and seeing value where everyone else just sees garbage.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because to really wrap our heads around the massive scale of this empire, we have to start with the number 14. Just imagine it for a second. You're a 14-year-old Jewish immigrant from Western Russia. Your father has passed away, your family is living in extreme poverty, basically surviving on a single meal a day. And then you make the heartbreaking decision to leave your mother behind, scrape together whatever pennies your family has left, and buy a one-way ticket on a ship to America. You arrive at the chaotic ports of a brand new country, you have absolutely no money, you have nowhere to live, you don't speak a single word of English, and you have zero connections. All you've got in your pocket is a crumpled piece of paper with an uncle's address. Well, that was Sam Zemurray.
There's a saying that perfectly captures the core philosophy of Sam's entire journey. Jahan bade merchants pakiwe falo ko fenkoete, us ladke ko wahan ek opportunity dikhi. Meaning where big merchants threw away ripe fruit, that boy saw an opportunity. You see, when he finally found his uncle and got a place to sleep, he just immediately started working. He swept floors, he did door-to-door deliveries, he worked in warehouses. But here's the thing, Sam wasn't just a laborer, he was like a human sponge. He had this intense, honestly almost terrifying observational skill. While he was working all these odd jobs, he was quietly listening to every single conversation, studying the suppliers, and analyzing exactly what the customers needed. He was secretly learning the nuts and bolts of how American business actually worked. Chapter 1. A Boy with Nothing. That extreme poverty he endured, it became the critical forge that built his absolutely relentless work ethic. So Sam realized pretty quickly that sweeping floors was never going to change his family's destiny. He knew that to do something massive, he had to go where the massive money was flowing, right? Where thousands of dollars of goods were being traded every single day. So at 16 years old, he travels to the port of Mobile, Alabama, and he witnesses this absolute frenzy dominated by a Goliath monopoly, the United Fruit Company. They sorted their bananas into very strict piles. First, you had the premium green bananas. These were highly valued and immediately loaded onto trains to be shipped nationwide. Then there were the yellow bananas, which were sold at a discount. But then, Sam noticed the discarded pile, the ripe bananas with all those little brown freckles. Now, they were perfectly fine to eat right then and there, but totally useless for long-distance transport. For the massive United Fruit Company, this represented a staggering 15% waste. I mean, they were literally dumping them into the ocean or just letting them rot on the docks. But for Sam, this was an absolute gold mine. Chapter 2. The Golden Waste. Sam looks at this discarded fruit and decides to make a move that, honestly, probably looked completely insane to everyone around him. He boldly walks right up to these corporate executives and offers to buy the trash nobody wanted. Remember, he's a 16-year-old kid with heavily broken English wearing ragged clothes. And the executives? They were thrilled. To them, getting literally anything for their garbage was a huge win, so they gave him an incredibly cheap bulk rate. But to fund this whole thing, Sam had to put up $50. Now that might not sound like much to us today, but remember, this was the 1890s. This was his entire life savings. Every single penny he had carefully scraped together from years of sweeping floors and running deliveries was on the line. He poured 100% of his net worth into a massive pile of rapidly decaying fruit. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the risk he was taking. To put that into perspective for us today, that $50 is equivalent to over $5,300 now. He took over $5,000 of hard-earned, floor-sweeping money and bought thousands of bananas that would literally turn to mush in a matter of days. Talk about putting everything on the line, right?
Chapter 3. Racing Against Time. So Sam immediately loads his massive haul onto a regional train, planning to sell the bananas at towns along the route. But he instantly hits a massive wall in a ticking clock scenario. The ripe bananas were browning incredibly fast in the brutal southern heat, but the delivery trains were disastrously slow. We're talking stopping for hours just to clear tracks or load other cargo. With his inventory literally rotting on these delayed trains, Sam's agile mind kicked into overdrive. He jumps off the train, sprints to a Western Union telegraph office, and starts messaging grocery stores and street vendors down the rail line. He tells them, "Hey, a massive shipment of incredibly cheap bananas is arriving on the next train. Meet me at the platform." He essentially invented a just-in-time sales cycle, pre-selling his product before it even physically arrived.
And guess what?
It worked perfectly. At every single station, crowds of buyers were waiting for him. He sold the bananas fast and cheap. By the end of his very first trip, he had totally cleared out his inventory and walked away with $190. He'd made a pure profit of what would be hundreds and hundreds of dollars today. But actually, more important than the cash, he had proof. His incredible business model worked. He had successfully pulled off a brilliant arbitrage strategy, exploiting this massive blind spot that the corporate monopoly was entirely ignoring.
Once he had that formula down, his growth was just explosive. Think about it. Born in 1877, discovers the trade at 16, and by 1903, in just a single decade, this impoverished teen was generating millions in sales. He systemized the whole shebang: who to buy from, exactly where to route the trains, and how to price it all. He was moving thousands of kilos of fruit a day and paying the port workers entirely in cash.
Chapter 4: The Monopoly Fights Back. Because, as we know, whenever you disrupt a market, that market is going to strike back.
Sam was doing so well that his cheap, ripe bananas were actually flooding the market and undercutting the demand for United Fruit's premium green bananas. The sleeping giant was waking up, and let me tell you, they did not like this scrappy kid eating into their profits. So the crucial point is exactly how ruthlessly a corporate monopoly will try to squeeze out a competitor. United Fruit started playing really dirty. They purposefully delayed Sam's cargo. They'd randomly cut his daily supply in half or just turn him away from the docks entirely empty-handed. In their most aggressive move, the monopoly actually started dumping their own crates into the market at artificial losses just to utterly kill Sam's profit margins. They were literally trying to bleed him dry.
Chapter 5: The Ultimate Gamble. Sam quickly realizes he couldn't survive if he remained dependent on his enemy's supply chain.
So Sam decides to execute this incredibly aggressive pivot to bypass the monopoly entirely. He partners up with an investor named Ashbel Hubbard, buys his own shipping fleet, and decides, you know what, I'm going to grow my own fruit. But to do this, he has to leave the relative comfort of the American ports and move directly into the malaria-infested, unforgiving jungles of Central America to buy raw, undeveloped land. The contrast between these two warring factions was just stark. You had United Fruit executives sitting in clean, air-conditioned offices up in Boston, completely detached from the product, just reading over reports. Meanwhile, Sam Zemurray was out there in muddy boots. He was in the jungle, swinging a machete, clearing brush, and planting seeds right alongside his laborers. And because of this hands-on leadership, he built incredibly deep loyalty with the local workers and politicians. He understood the ground reality far better than any corporate suit ever could.
But as you can imagine, building a jungle empire comes with a massive heavy toll. Sam was aggressively buying up thousands of acres of land just to outpace the monopoly, but it was completely draining his cash. He was accumulating massive debt. Traditional banks looked at the risks of the banana business, floods, droughts, pests, and they flat out denied him any more loans. To make matters even worse, his conservative business partner, Hubbard, was absolutely terrified by Sam's reckless expansion and wanted to pull the plug. The pressure was just monumental.
Let's move to and see how this builds into literally one of the wildest financial maneuvers in history. Facing total bankruptcy and denied by every traditional bank, where did he go? He went straight to the criminal underworld. He secured a massive, shady loan at a staggering, back-breaking 50% interest rate just so he could ruthlessly buy out his hesitant partner and take full control of the operation. Now, what's really interesting about this resulting equity breakdown is the sheer irony of it all. Sam emerged with 90% control of his booming company. But ironically, his bitter rival, United Fruit, held that remaining 10% from an early strategic investment they'd made back when they thought they could control him. They were unknowingly funding the very man who was coming to destroy them.
Sam had officially reached the point of no return. He now had 100% complete decision-making control, but literally his entire life, his safety, and his vast underworld debts were on the line. He couldn't just play business anymore. Because of the sheer scale of his operations in Central America, business was blurring directly into geopolitics. Local laws, taxes, and national leadership were now directly impacting his survival. The game was no longer just about selling fruit, it was about raw power.
Which leaves us with a truly astonishing reality. That 14-year-old kid who arrived in America with absolutely nothing was now a titan, standing on the edge of the jungle, holding immense wealth, crushing debt, and unparalleled ambition. And as his corporate battles escalate from the ports of Alabama to the highest political offices of Central America, it forces us to ask one deeply provocative question. How exactly does a man who started by selling discarded fruit end up overthrowing sovereign governments? Well, we'll uncover that wild reality next time.